Hare Gange Mahadev Sri Shankara Parvati Pati Mahadev Sri Shankara.
Namaste, it's Sahara Rose, and welcome back to the Highest Self podcast, a place where we discuss what makes you your soul's highest evolvement. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I am so grateful to have you here. This is a super essential episode to get started with. And if you're here all the time, you know how we do. You know we like to keep it sensual and spiritual and playful and deep and all the things because that's how we do it. We're goddesses. We are all of the archetypes, all of the aspects of the divine feminine balanced into one sacred being. And that is what we explore in this episode, especially through the lens of H2O. Yes, our waters, our sacred waters, both in the world and inside of us. You know what I mean? So this is an explicit episode. I do recommend 18 and older for listeners, and this podcast is a podcast generally for 18 and older, so viewers' discretion. But I really believe, if only we learned about this stuff when we were younger, how much different our relationships with our sexuality would be. You know, I actually think that this should be mandatory listening in middle school, but I can't legally say that. So the waters, where to start? So many of you who have been listening to this podcast, follow me on Instagram, etc., know that I deeply resonate with the mermaid archetype. And this month in Rose Gold Goddesses, my Sacred Sisterhood collective, we are diving deep into the frequency of Lemuria, the ancient civilization that was all about living from the heart. So it was all about community, about oneness, about fun, joy, ecstatic dance, drumming, fruits, herbalism, protecting our environment. So if that is striking a chord with you, you are probably a past life Lemurian or a Lemurian volunteer here to come back. So I and many of my Rose Gold Goddesses have shared this too, always wanted to be a marine biologist growing up. I was enamored by the ocean. And to this day, if I could go to outer space or explore everything in the sea, I would go to the sea. I am an aquatic being, and I ended up, going back to mermaid school last year to actually train in mermaid arts. I'm not joking about that with this incredible mermaid. If you did not know, mermaiding is actually a huge awakening that a lot of people are having. So you actually wear mermaid tails and free dive into deep waters. I was swimming with manta rays in Bali and also doing environmental protection there to raise awareness on the plastic consumption, how it ends up in the ocean. So using, the beautiful image of a mermaid surrounded by plastic to show the juxtaposition of our world today. So I'm a mermaid, you might be too, and it is so potent to be connecting with these water codes at this time because the world is so freaking fiery. Everyone is so fiery. Everyone is so on edge right now. They're waiting for an argument. I think people have just been at home for a very, very long time and they don't know how to contain their energy. Most people don't know how to channel it in a creative and cathartic way. So because of that, they're getting really, really tense and stuck and heavy and wanting to get that out onto other people. So it ends up being in a rage, in a volcano, And to me, I went to Burning Man last year and it was not my cup of tea, to be honest. Much respect to people who like to do it, but my epiphany that I had was we don't need more burning men. We need more watering women. We need more connection to earth, not going to a place that humans can't survive and bringing enough plastic and gas and consumption and drugs so we can have fun for a week. No, how can we actually be one with the earth around us, with the trees, with the rivers, with the ocean, and connect to her because she wants to live in harmony with us. It's not about going somewhere that we're not supposed to be and setting up our stake to be there. I'm not into conquering, I'm into where does Earth want us to live? Where's there fresh spring water for us? Where is there beautiful fruit trees growing for us? Where can we live in harmony with Earth so we do her the least amount of damage? And I know a lot of you are on that same path. A lot of you are thinking about moving to, more nature-filled areas and living maybe off grid, or at least less waste, less impact on the world. And so many of us are getting that epiphany. I know for myself, I deeply desire to move to Bali would be ideal, but we'll see where the journey takes me. But a lot of us are feeling that call of reconnecting to the nature, and especially reconnecting to that water frequency. So a couple months ago, or actually it was last year, I have rituals a lot. I'm always in rituals for full moons, new moons. It's what I facilitate in Rose Gold Goddesses. And a friend of mine, Mia Magic, who has been on this podcast, brought over this beautiful queen named Dakota Chanel, who you will hear on the episode today. And we ended up doing this very potent goddess Isis ritual together, and we were channeling sacred codes and doing this beautiful tongue cleansing ritual, etc. And I deeply connected with her, especially finding out that she is a water priestess. So I was like, yes, that I am, when I was younger, and I share on this episode, I definitely had awakenings that in past lives I had been a water shaman, and I was like, water priestess, like, oof, that's like a feminine way. So I had to have her on the podcast to share all things water priestessing, connecting to your sacred waters, and of course, the practice of amrita, which is our sacred ejaculation. In Hindi, it's actually amrita, but in English, you would say amrita. So we speak about what this is, and that each of us feminine beings has a reservoir of water inside of us that can be shared, bursted out through orgasm. And how to experience that, what could be different blocks, different pains, different shadows to overcome, and letting yourself just be at one with your divinity and your bliss, and letting yourself explore and enjoy the deepest pleasures of being alive and really blossom like a flower, and then let your waterfalls unfold. So we dive into all of this in this episode. I have to say, this was one of my favorite conversations, and she is so full of wisdom. And I share at the end of the episode, if you do want to do her Amrita course, she offers us a discount for Highest Self podcast listeners, which I also have in the show notes. And even more excitingly, she will be facilitating a water ritual with the Rose Gold Goddesses at the end of this month. So if you're a Rose Gold Goddesses member, you're going to have access to that. And if not, come join us, rosegoldgoddesses.com. You'll be able to participate in the water ritual with Dakota herself, and as well as experience our 2-hour Lemuria circle and all of the other 11 goddess circles that we have done, from Saraswati, Durga, Lakshmi, Lalita Sundari, Yemaya, Bridget, Kuan Yin, so many, Sekhmet, Isis. We have worked with so many goddesses, and it is so beautiful to be 1 year into Rose Gold Goddesses and exploring all these different archetypes that are inside of us. So come join us. This is a community. This is so much more than content. It is a tribe of 2,000 plus spiritual soul sisters who are committed to helping you become your highest self. So come join us in Rose Gold Goddesses. I'm so excited to meet you inside. And without further ado, let's welcome Dakota Chanel to the Highest Self podcast. And before we get started, check out these brands that make Highest Self Podcast possible. Are you that person that all your friends and family members come to when they need wellness advice? Are you constantly looking up new ways to heal and balance your mind, body, and spirit, including listening to this podcast? Well, have you ever considered having a career becoming a holistic health coach where you get to decide your own hours, work with people, tackling the subjects that you are the most passionate about, and having financial freedom along the way? Well, I'm so excited to be teaming up with my very own alma mater, Institute for Integrative Nutrition, to offer their biggest discount yet. You'll receive $2,250 off tuition, an extra bonus that they're offering just with my Highest Self podcast listeners on how to launch your dream book. This course is going to get you super clear on what your book is about and how to bring it out into the world. I've created a webinar for you on how to have a thriving business as a health coach. So using social media, creating passive income, how to have a wait list of clients and become the best known coach in your niche with raving testimonials. Tickets to a live upcoming IIN conference where I will be meeting you over there. Super excited to connect. And a bundle of all digital wellness guides like Ayurveda, self-love, whole food eating, etc. So all you have to do is head over to my show notes. You'll see the link over there. It's a little bit.ly link. It'll take you right there. You'll be able to receive a sample class, check out the curriculum, get all your questions answered. And I'm so excited to have you on this mission, raising the vibration of the planet together as a health coach. Again, head over to my show notes. You'll see the link right there, and I'll see you inside. Are you ready to reconnect with your joy, that vibration of living in alignment with your heart, where you are fueled with passion to fulfill your Dharma, your soul's purpose? Well, if so, then I invite you to join us in Rose Gold Goddesses, because this month we are diving deep into the energy of Lemuria, the ancient civilization based off of living a life of alignment with your true joy. In this 2-hour workshop, we dive deep into what the Lemurian frequency is all about, connecting with the mermaid and dolphin energy, why we need community more than ever, and plenty of practices, rituals, journal prompts, and so much more, so you can finally make 2020 the year that you feel vibrant, radiant, and full of passion to actually create what you were meant to do here on this planet and live your truth. Well, if this is resonating with you, then come join us in Rose Gold Goddesses. You are going to love this Lemuria circle and the 11 other goddess circles we have done. You have access to all of them as soon as you join us in Rose Gold Goddesses. On top of that, you will be able to do my healing and embodiment through dance workshop. This is a 3.5-hour workshop with spoken and actual follow-along dance prompts you can do to connect to the healing energy of dance, to embody yourself, to release trauma, and step into your most embodied, authentic version. We also have my Awaken Your Powers Masterclass with Shaman Durek, my Sex Money Magic program with Alexandra Roxo, and dozens of other workshops available for you as soon as you join us in this community with 2,000 other spiritual soul sisters, all committed to living a life of joy, truth, fun, radiance, and Dharma. This is all available for you in Rose Gold Goddesses, my membership community, and I am so excited to invite you inside. You can find more information at rosegoldgoddesses.com. The link is in the show notes, and I can't wait to meet you. Welcome, Dakota, to the Highest Self podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sahara. I'm so grateful to be here today.
And the first question I'd love to ask you is, what makes you your highest self?
That's such a beautiful question. I feel like for me, it's so easy to feel my highest self when I'm like alone in nature, when I'm playing in the water or mermaiding, but when I'm in relationship is really where I get that reflection. So I'd have to say relationship, because that's where I see where I'm not fully in alignment with my highest self. So at the end of each day, I love to, before I go to bed, just think about my day and think about my partnership with my beloved, think about my relationship to my clients, even my relationship to food, and see, wow, was I in alignment with my highest self, or how could I align even deeper tomorrow? And celebrating how good I did, but also seeing where even more of that alignment can come. Because it's so easy to feel like we're enlightened or we have that full alignment, or we're just in our bliss, frolicking around, whatever it is that brings us to that place. But relationship is where we really get that honest reflection.
And I think so many people can resonate with, especially at the beginning of their spiritual awakenings, feeling like they want to be totally alone and not resonating with, their former friends, family members, etc. And it's like that perfect balance of taking that time to yourself to grow, but then also coming back to community and seeing that is, the point of life is not to live completely alone. At least for most household or path is not that. But sometimes it's so hard because we can't control the outcome when there are all of these other people involved.
Exactly. And that's where there's such opportunity for spiritual growth. And it's just as powerful. You don't need to be spiritual and go to a cave by yourself, but really going to see your family, raising a family, all the day-to-day things, staying centered in our hearts and love. That's the real test. That's the real challenge, especially in these times we're going through right now. Wow, we are all being so deeply tested.
And I love that quote that's like, if you think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your family. And
Exactly.
there you'll see whatever triggers that you get to still work on. And it really reminds us
Yeah,
of connecting to that water frequency, connecting to the flow, not being, everyone is so fiery right now as we've experienced, everyone's
exactly.
experienced. So what does it mean to connect to the water element?
Well, we are the water element. That's for me what being human is at a physical level, because we're actually 99, over 99% water at the molecular level. At that deep, deep level, we are actually these oceanic liquid beings moving around. It's just that to our eyes, we think that we're solid. To our eyes, because we're in this dimension, we're having this sensory experience. We don't see it that way, but that's actually what's happening. And so for me, connecting to the water, we are the water. So when we connect to her, we remember the truth of who we are. And for me, it's been the primary access point for embodying my higher self and for living a life of magic and of miracles. And another thing that really supports me with embodying my highest self is my daily water prayers. And that's something that I always recommend for people who are starting out and really wanting to connect deeper with the water element, is especially in the West. We take water for granted. We turn the tap on, she's there. She's always there at just a flick of a switch for us. But really, water is so precious and water is sacred. And so when we do water prayers, it helps us to remember that and to connect to that sacredness. And in ancient cultures, water is looked at, and in modern indigenous cultures, even, she's looked at as the divine mother, not just as this like substance, but actually as this energetic frequency of mother love. And there's so many reasons for that. But number one is that I believe that we all come from the ocean, that we actually come from the water. There's this theory called the aquatic ape theory, where it says that we are sea mammals and that we then adapted to live on land. And it makes so much sense because we have the mammalian dive reflex, which, just like all other mammals, when our face goes underwater, our heartbeat slowly decreases. Our body starts to release more red blood cells. Like, there's all these physical things that happen that only happen to other aquatic mammals. So it helps us to realize, like, wow, we actually are these aquatic beings, which is so amazing. And when we think about it as well, we come from the waters of our parents. We come from the seed, the semen, literally sea men, little men or women swimming in the sea, that starlight of seed, and our mother's egg, which are both very, very watery and liquid. We are literally born through that harmonic song of our parents' waters. And then we're gestated inside the womb of our mother in her amniotic fluid, which is very, very similar to that of the ocean. And it's also comes from her blood marrow. The amniotic fluid actually comes from the very depth of her plasma. So we realize, diving into the water codes and the water priestess magic, that we are water, we come from water. And through connecting with water and understanding her teachings, we can be supported in living our best life. That's truly what I believe. There's so much here, but the water prayers are simple, and it's something that everybody can do starting right now.
So beautifully stated. And I think so many listeners can relate to that feeling of like wanting to go back home to the sea. Like when you put on those goggles and you look underwater and you see how beautifully harmonic every creature is under the ocean. There's the shark and there's the
Mm,
starfish and there's the this and that. And, for some reason in Hollywood, they've made it like Jaws and it's like really scary down there, Titanic. But it's actually so beautiful how in harmony, at peace they are, how colorful it is. It's really an example of, I mean, it is what we used to live like. And now underwater is the only place that we could see that. I know for myself, I always wanted to be a marine biologist and like help the dolphins live a happier life. And that was like always what I wanted to do. And I think so many of us felt that. We remembered that resonance. But then as we got older, we got more disconnected to the waters. And what I'm seeing right now is the system of teaching infants how to swim at a very, very young age. Have you seen this? They're putting like infant babies in the water, and these babies they know how to swim. They know how to
Yeah.
survive. Can you share a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but that does go to the mammalian dive reflex. That's what's happening with these babies is literally when they're put underwater, their nose and mouth automatically close. So they will not ingest water when their face is underwater, when they're really first born. And this actually is also shown when a baby is having an underwater birth. A woman's giving birth and having her baby in the water, the baby doesn't actually need to be brought up right away because the baby is still connected to the umbilical cord. So it's actually getting oxygen through the waters, which is so amazing. And then the baby doesn't have to be rushed to the top. It can stay under for, really safely 10 minutes even. I wouldn't recommend that, just bring your baby right up. But I have talked to women that have not rushed their baby and just brought the baby up after, 10 minutes even, and the baby's perfectly fine. So what that does is you realize, wow, we really are these aquatic beings. And connecting back to that aquatic nature, that's why so many of us feel more at peace when we're in the ocean, or even taking a shower or taking a bath. Like these simple practices of connecting with water are so powerful for our bodies.
Yes, I think so many of us, we get that, a realization or an idea when we are in the shower, washing the dishes, something with water, and we're not realizing it's that element of water that's creating more flow. So can you share with us what are some of these water prayers and how can we do them?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I'd love to share about water's like main teachings. And for me, it's the teaching of unconditional love, right? Water washes all of us clean. She doesn't care if you're a saint, if you're a murderer. She gives everybody that same blessing of her cleansing power. So water teaches us of that unconditional agape love. She teaches us of that purification, that washing away of what no longer serves us. She teaches us of unity. Water connects us all around the world. She doesn't care about boundaries or borders. She flows up to the sky and falls in a different country and flows down that river into the ocean. So she teaches us of unity. So for me, those principles of love, of purity, of unity, it's also really revered in a lot of cultures for forgiveness. A lot of forgiveness, indigenous forgiveness rituals involve water, that washing away of, holding on to resentments. So water prayers are simple, but it goes off of the premise that water actually has memory. And this is something that science has been discovering. And also, of course, the movie Frozen. I think we all watched Frozen 2 and loved that movie. And one of the main messages is that water has memory. Well, that's true. And you can see it in Dr. Emoto's work, where he actually photographed water crystals after specific frequencies of music or different words were spoken to them. And you can see how the water crystals respond differently. And so water responds to harmonic frequencies and high vibrations of love and gratitude the best. So the more that we can be in a state of love and gratitude, that helps the water crystals of our body, but it also helps the waters all around us. So water prayers are understanding that when we talk to water, we're not crazy. We're actually giving the water a blessing. And I believe that one of the purposes of being human is that we have the ability to feel gratitude, right? How amazing is that? We can appreciate the creator's creation. We can appreciate the flowers in the sky and the waters. So that's being anchored in that frequency while doing water prayers is essential. But what I love to do is I have my water chalice, and every morning I will fill this chalice with water, and I will say prayers for my health and well-being, for my own body. And then I'll drink that water and I'll feel that water being a blessing to all of my cells. And then I also have a water bowl where I do prayers for the collective. And I keep this on my water altar. And every morning I go outside and I do meditation and I say prayers that for blessings that I wish to see in the world. I say prayers for heaven on earth. I say prayers for peace for all life, and I speak that into the water. And once I'm completed doing that, I actually pour a little bit of the water onto a crystal that I have in the ground. And I water that crystal and pray that the prayers that I've done with this water will ripple out into all the waters on the planet and be a gift and a blessing. And I do that every morning. And I keep that water for a full lunar cycle. So every new moon, I replace the water. In ceremony, I'll go and I'll offer the water back to either a water source or to the land. And then I'll refill the bowl and I'll put it back on the altar. So that's my daily water prayer practice. And it's so powerful, so simple, but so powerful in connecting and reminding me of those principles of love, peace, unity, and forgiveness.
But that is so beautiful. And I'm sure just taking that water in, just giving it that little bit of intentionality, it makes it so much more hydrating and healing and refreshing. And it's so interesting that now there is this a remembrance of the water. And a lot of people, instead of saying out of balance, they're saying dehydrated. We are dehydrated as a society. And what we need is more hydration and connecting to that water element and having more of it in our lives. And a lot of your work is also speaking about the waters of our bodies, particularly the amrita, which is our sacred ejaculation. I don't even know what the word would be for it, but the flowing of our internal waterfalls. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Oh, I would love to. So, hydration, what you said, is really the root cause of most ailments. Most people are dehydrated because a lot of the water is actually what I call dead water or dehydrating water. So, I believe that spring water is the best water that we can drink for our bodies. It's the water that comes from deep, deep under the earth. It's filled with all of that mana, with all of that energy, with all those minerals, probiotics. And what happens is a lot of the spring water that we get in the store, it's actually been heat treated. And then it's killing all of the living nutrients. And then a lot of times it's put into plastic or bottles and shipped. And this is to keep it shelf stable. So gathering our own spring water is an amazing way to be hydrated. And hydration is an essential part of our amrita, or having female ejaculation. If we are dehydrated, our bodies aren't going to be as willing to let go of that nectar, as I like to call it. So amrita is what I like to call female ejaculation. And so many women are kind of have conflicting viewpoints of amrita because a lot of us have only seen it maybe in pornography or heard about it in not a very sacred way. And there's oftentimes a lot of blown out of proportion thoughts around it, like, oh, women will just squirt across the room if they're having sex and have this kind of orgasm. Whereas, that can happen. But for myself, that's not what happens for me. And for a lot of women, that's actually not what happens. So amrita is our divine nectar that flows from our G-spot, or it flows through the urethra, but through stimulating our G-spot, and then comes at the height of orgasm. So the Taoists actually call the G-spot the black pearl. And I love this name for it because for me, the G-spot never resonated. It's actually named after a man, a gynecologist back in Germany. And I thought, wow, to name a part of a woman's body after a man just makes no sense. So this name of the black pearl really resonates. And amrita, it feels amazing. It's my favorite kind of orgasm. And a lot of women have experienced clitoral orgasms, but it's more rare to experience internal orgasms. And there's many different kinds of internal orgasms, but my favorite is definitely amrita, G-spot orgasms. And what happens is that through the stimulation, the rhythmic stimulation of the G-spot, these waters build inside of us. And at that height of orgasm, the water actually flows out. And a lot of women have this building happen inside of their bodies, but actually hold it back during climax because they're afraid they're going to pee, because that's kind of the only reference point that we are given as women. If you haven't experienced it before, it also flows just like urine through your urethra, just like a man's semen also flows through his urethra. So getting over that kind of hump or that fear of peeing will allow you to let go and experience that release that our bodies naturally want to have. And a lot of times we can think, oh, it's messy, or, I don't want to make the bed wet. But really, it's this wild form of empowerment, I believe. And I'm so grateful. I've been having them for a really long time, since I was 15 years old. And the first man I was with never shamed me about it. I know this is also something that happens, is women get shamed because men don't understand and think that they pee the bed as well. But really, this is female ejaculate. Just like men have their ejaculate, we can also ejaculate. However, it does not look like male ejaculate. I have had some women say, oh, wait, I thought it was supposed to be all milky and thick. But no, it's actually clear. It looks like water. There's no smell, there's no taste, and it's just this beautiful form of water. And on a spiritual note, I believe that this water is sacred. So this water flows from the depth of our body at the height of orgasm. Think of the frequency that that water contains, the bliss, the pleasure that that water contains. It's so powerful. And I love to actually do ceremony with it. And one of my favorite stories about amrita is I went to the ocean to offer the ocean my amrita nectar for the first time. I collected it and felt inspired to make an offering. And I remember just putting it on the sand. It was also an embodiment photo shoot. And I just walked away from the jar, and all of a sudden this rogue wave just came out of nowhere, super high on the sand, and grabbed it and sucked it into her. And in that moment, I got this message from the water. She said, I need you to keep offering your amrita. I need this sacred nectar. I need to know that my daughters are experiencing the pleasure that they were meant to. Because think about it, in ancient times, we used to make love on the earth. We used to make love outside. Our juices would flow onto her. It used to be ancient fertility rites, ancient goddess rites. Beltane is a common one that's still practiced today in certain places, May 1st. And there were fertility rites of offering and making love on the ground to bless the seeds, to bless the crops, to bless the goddess. And so it's really important that we get back to this understanding that this fluid is not just a benefit for us and our bodies, but it's actually a gift to the planet. And this frequency is a gift, this frequency of pleasure, of our bliss and our ecstasy that's contained in this water. Wow, giving that back to the earth is so powerful. And yeah, it's just such a gift to be able to be alive. And I feel like the more that we can give our gratitude for that gift of having this body and to tap into the potential that lays within us, oh, it's really, really important.
And I think a lot of people have been, collectively giving their menstrual blood back to the earth. And that is now, a pretty common practice, people giving it to their house plants, et cetera. But I definitely haven't heard many people speak about the amrita. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's like 50% of women aren't even experiencing an orgasm.
Yeah.
From penetration. And then I don't know what's the percentage that experiences the amrita. I think a lot of women have experienced feeling like wet or creamy, but I don't, even for myself, I don't know if it's been like an amrita experience. So can you share with us maybe any tips, practices, things to be mindful of to let these waters move through us?
Absolutely. What you just said, let the waters move through us, is really the golden key because it teaches us the ultimate surrender. It doesn't happen if we're in our heads thinking about, what we look like or our to-do list or, if he's enjoying it or not, like any of those thoughts that you might have. It comes from that complete, just no mind space where you're so fully in the sensations and able to really surrender. And amrita is actually directly connected to the heart. So our G spot, that spot inside of our yonis, for those of you that don't know where your G spot is, it's located on the anterior wall, so the belly button side. And it's about 1 to 3 inches inside. And it's a ridged spot. It kind of feels like the roof of your mouth. So if you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and you feel those ridges, it's ridged just like that. And this spot is directly connected to our heart and to emotions. So what I found is that in order to let our amrita flow, it's really important to be in touch with our tears and the sacredness of crying. And in my own personal story, the one time that my amrita stopped flowing, it was after a massive heartbreak. My ex actually went insane. And when I was with my next partner, I couldn't have an amrita orgasm. And I was so confused. I've never had any trouble. And I ended up getting us tantra classes because I thought it was his fault. But what was revealed during the sessions is that it was actually this block that I had in my heart, that I was really devastated and heartbroken. I hadn't fully felt it. And literally, as soon as I felt it and I released those tears, my amrita started flowing again. And so having amrita orgasms, it's not just all about the pleasure and the bliss. It's actually really deep work, because what I teach is you actually need to go into your G spot and feel all the other things that are there that might be blocking that water from flowing. For example, traumas, pain, heartbreaks, the pain, the anger, the grief, all those pieces. And transmuting and releasing them, I specifically teach through massage and through our voice. So through massaging the G spot and sounding and really moving those emotions through somatically, our voice is so powerful. It's directly connected to our yoni as well. There's you've probably seen those pictures circulating the internet of how our vocal cords are the same shape as our yoni. And it's so amazing to realize that correlation. So for having amrita orgasms, I recommend doing G-spot massage, feeling what's there, sounding it out, really allowing yourself to feel, to cry, to journal. And it might take time. You know, that's the thing. You can't force the waters to flow. It's really this relationship that you're building with this part of yourself, with your body. And on a practical note, the rhythm is what I found is that if you're using your fingers, sometimes they can get tired because it's a rhythmic kind of pulsing motion and kind of a come hither with your fingers, where I know that your wrist can tire quickly. So when you're first learning, it can be really helpful to actually get a G-spot wand. I recommend Rosie Reese's Yoni Palace Sacred Squirter Wand. It's made of glass, and she has really high quality products, and it's a perfect curved shape, and it takes that pressure off of your hand. So that's an amazing place to start, is just exploring your G-spot, calling on your water, setting the intention. Intention is so powerful. So sometimes women take my course and they say, Dakota, just by signing up, I'm having them. Just by giving myself permission, I'm having them. And I say, yeah, that's how it works. You know, sometimes we just need that permission. So if you're listening to this, this is your permission to let your waters flow, to let yourself feel all of those things that might be in your G-spot that want to be released. And, you know, the waters are about emotion, right? So being in touch with our emotions, not bypassing them, but really allowing ourselves to know their power, and that we don't have to be scared of them, that they move just like the ocean waves. You know, one day we're happy, one day we're not. One day we're angry, one day we're not. But that's not who we are. We're the water itself. We're not just the waves on the surface that come and go. So that's been something that's really helped me in moving through those pieces, especially with sexual trauma, which is so deep and can be so challenging to deal with and to really face.
That's so important to mention, because I think a lot of times we think of these things as like almost like theatrical acts because of the pornography industry of like, oh yeah, I want to become a squirter now because again, guys will think it's hot, or it's another goal that I'm setting for myself, or, I don't want anyone to have in their head of, I must have been doing it wrong this whole time because I'm not having that experience. Different people are just connected to different parts of their bodies, and it's always this learning. My question is, are all of your G-spot orgasms now creating the amrita, or do you also have G-spot orgasms without amrita?
That's a great question. I have both. So you can absolutely have G-spot orgasms without amrita, and you can have them with amrita. What I notice is that it really depends emotionally for me where I'm at. It also depends where I'm at in my menstrual cycle. If I'm ovulating, I'm feeling a little more juicy. And I also just want to go back to what you said about any women that haven't experienced them. Yeah, just knowing that there's not anything that you're doing wrong. This is something that can take cultivation, can take practice. And it's something that is really important to do for you, not to do it for your partner, not to do it because anyone else is doing it, but because you just genuinely feel like you want to experience this for yourself. There's that curiosity, there's that openness that's coming from a place of innocence and no pressure. Because when we are in that surrender, there can't be that expectation, right? So I tell women it takes as long as it needs to take, whether it takes a week or it takes 3 years or 10 years, like just being present with what is, allowing that to flow. And this reminds me actually of your question before regarding the different fluids. A lot of women say, oh, I'm really wet. Is that amrita? And, being wet, that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful fluid. And that's something that can be really sweet as well if you want to put it on a crystal and offer that to the earth. But with amrita, there's more of the fluid. So you'll actually literally feeling it pour from you. The quantity varies. Sometimes I have smaller ones. Sometimes they're huge. Like yesterday, there was this puddle that was like 1.5 feet long across the bed. So sometimes they're really explosive. And I also feel like this has to do with how hydrated we are. Like I said before, it's really important to make sure we're not dehydrated. And then also realizing our bodies, just like Mother Earth, can create water. So this is something you can just type into Google, our bodies create water. There's a really small percent that we actually manufacture ourselves. We don't get from drinking outside of ourselves. Our body makes it. So that's my thought, is that part of the amrita actually is our bodies generating that herself, as well as pulling it in from the walls. So there's also primary water under the earth, where the earth creates her own water. And so I just love that we're the microcosm of her, right? That we have that same ability. So beautiful.
I know this episode is good, but so is this sponsor. A lot of us don't feel comfortable going to supermarkets right now, and cafes are closed, which means we aren't picking up green juices or even buying fresh produce as often. But right now, it is more important than ever before to keep our immune systems high, especially with greens and superfoods. I've been drinking Organifi Green every single day, and it's been a goddess send. It contains immune-boosting ingredients like moringa, chlorella, spirulina, wheatgrass, ashwagandha, turmeric, lemon, mint, and so much more. It takes only 1 minute to add into my water, and I feel so good knowing that at least I got my greens in for that day, which frankly I may not have had otherwise. I've also sent it to my family members to keep them healthy at this time too. You can receive 20% off your Organifi at Organifi.com using coupon code Sahara. Again, that's Organifi, Organifi.com using coupon code Sahara, and that link is in the show notes. I have this friend who says that she has amrita, but for her, it's like not always with pleasure. It's more something that like she knows like kind of where to touch herself to create it, but it doesn't feel like an orgasm. What do you think is happening if someone's experiencing that?
That's a great question. Some women can have amrita or have amrita experiences without an orgasm. And my personal take on that is that there might be some pain in the G-spot that hasn't been fully released to feel that pleasure. And this happens to me too. If I'm not properly warmed up or if I have some emotional stuff that I haven't dealt with that I know is there, it's going to be painful. And so sometimes it's not possible until I deal with those pieces. You can push through and go through the pain and just get an amrita experience. But for me, it's not, that's not really the goal. It's really to be so present with our bodies, so present and following and listening to the sensations, that when we build that energy, when we build that water, we're building that orgasmic energy, right? And part of orgasmic energy is feeling whatever's there. So sometimes it's more orgasmic to cry or to scream than to have an orgasm, because what's fully pleasurable is letting ourselves feel exactly what's present. So a lot of times there's pain that needs to be felt before that pleasure can be there. And you can push through it and just come or have an ejaculation. But for me, it's less about that goal as it is the journey of getting to know our G-spots and moving through all of those layers that might be there.
Thank you so much for explaining. Do you think that it would be helpful to work with a jade egg before to maybe create a little bit more sensitivity? Or do you think that that's not really necessary? It's more like fingers or on spot?
That's a great question as well. I feel like it's optional. I've worked with the jade egg in my life, but I don't love it. It's not my go-to practice. And so I say, if you've tried jade egg and you love it, go for it. If that really helps you get in touch with your yoni and sensitivity, absolutely. Also, if you feel like you might need to build some more pelvic strength, that's a really great way to do that. However, it's not necessary. And just exploring and massaging with your fingers can be really powerful as well, because we get to feel. We get to feel the texture. We get to feel the sensations. And it's really vulnerable. I know a lot of times women can have kind of blocks around feeling themselves, but it's so profound to feel the different layers and textures and sensations actually with our own fingers. So that's what I recommend, number one. But the jade egg can absolutely be a great tool, especially if that's something that you already work with and really resonate with.
And I think a lot of women honestly feel a bit of disgust touching themselves. I watched some show, and for the first time, these women actually took a mirror and looked into their vulva. And these are grown women it was like a dating show or something too, but they had never done it. And they were like, at first really disgusted or shameful, and then they began to love it. But I think a lot of women have this feeling of maybe feeling queasy, or a man should only touch me, or a partner should only touch me. So how can they work through some negativity that shows up for them when it comes with touching themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Whew. It's so deep because it brings up all the sexual trauma. It brings up every time that, we had sex when maybe we weren't a full yes. And it can be so deeply emotional. What I recommend is what you just said. The yoni gazing is such a powerful way to start, because you can start reprogramming those beliefs without actually touching yourself. And I recommend with yoni gazing, getting really comfortable and doing it like a meditation, not like setting sacred space, putting on beautiful music, lighting candles, incense, like really making it a beautiful experience, not just in the bathroom, kind of like haphazardly trying to take a peek, really making it a sacred journey. And then begin by noticing what arises. When you look at her, what do you feel? What are those negative beliefs that you have? And then honoring those, speaking them out loud, and asking for support in those being released, and reprogramming, saying what you love about her, saying all the things you appreciate about her, saying how beautiful she is, whatever's authentic to you, reprogramming that visually with yourself. And there's actually something really powerful called yoni gazing. That's an oracle reading. I actually have a friend that does this, but what you can do is you can do it yourself. Our yonis are shaped like our mouths, right? And I believe that our yonis also have things that they want to say to us. We often think of our yoni as being this part of our body that maybe we're kind of disconnected from, or like you said, we only want a man to touch us. But really, she's not just for sex as well. Our yoni literally births babies. Our yoni is this root chakra, throne of power that we have. So part of like eye gazing with her, yoni gazing with her, is to not just see her in a sexual light, not just see her in this way, but to look at her and say, wow, I see you as this powerful portal that has the ability to birth not just children, but dreams and visions into this world. And I want to hear what you have to say. So also just taking some time, I teach women, just take time and listen to her, look at her, ask her, what do you have to say to me? And what can come through is profound. The messages, the insights. It's like listening to your intuition, but actually asking your center, your root portal of power. So amazing to do this.
And what I love about Tantra is, we in the West, for some reason, have become very obsessed with the third eye. Like we want to be intuitive, the third eye, but Tantra is all about the root and the sacral chakra. Like you fully are focused on that, meditating into that, because that's where, if that's not opened and fully blossomed like the 1,000-petaled lotus, nothing else is going to light up. And my Tantra teacher was sharing that if you actually only focus on meditating on the third eye and the other chakras below are not open, you'll actually create more overthinking, over analytical, excess mind, because it's not in harmony with that root and the rest of the body. And another beautiful thing that people can do with that practice is to breathe and look at your yoni and watch her, even different emotions, watch her change. I did this really cool workshop at Burning Man last year that was a yoni gazing ritual. So we were in partners. It was all female woo man. And we unclothed our bottom parts and opened up our legs. And for 15 minutes, you stared at your partner's yoni and told her everything you loved about it. And then for 15 minutes, she did it back to you. And it was actually, for me, even more challenging to stare at someone else's yoni for so long. Because being looked at, I could almost kind of check out mentally of like, okay, yeah, this is happening, but I'm kind of just disassociate. But to be really focused on her yoni, making sure she feels comfortable. So I didn't want to look away or anything. I wanted her to feel fully held because I knew how vulnerable it was for her. And to keep coming up with things that I could tell her that I loved about it. I was like, wow, I've never even looked at any vulva for so long. And it was also so powerful when you changed partners to see how different and unique and perfect they all are.
Yes. Oh, I love that you did that. That's so beautiful. And it's so true. They are all so different. And, if you're watching porn or, looking at certain magazines, you think, oh, maybe they're all supposed to look one way. And it's just not true. They're as different as different flowers on the earth. And yeah, I remember the first time I realized that I'd never seen another woman's yoni. I'd never really even looked at another woman's breasts or touched another woman's breasts. And I felt like this disconnection with my own body. I felt like, wow, more men have seen women than I've seen women. And it felt like something was imbalanced and had been kind of taken through the cultural conditioning. So that actually brought me on this whole other journey of reclaiming that part of myself and integrating it into retreats. And we also do yoni gazing with each other and speaking poetry and messages. And it's so powerful what comes through. Oh, and like you said, it can be even more challenging to be the one that's watching. Because there's also those conditionings of like, oh, is this okay?
Absolutely. And I've definitely had that realization of, you're friends with people for so long and you're like, wow, I haven't seen them naked. I feel like seeing your friend naked is like a milestone in the friendship of like, I saw your tits, we're even closer. Yeah. And also I think a lot of shame around pubic hair too, of like, I have a bush, I don't have a bush, I have this, I have that. And I think, back in the days of like the Turkish bathhouses, the woman would always be together naked. And, in Turkey, I had the pleasure of doing a bathhouse, and it was so amazing to see all these different women's bodies. And, it wasn't weird. Like no one was looking at each other. No one was like trying to look out of the corner of their eye. It was like, oh, another woman's body, just like you would see a woman's body on the beach with a bikini. For some reason, we haven't crossed that threshold yet of the yoni and the breasts. And, now we're slowly starting to normalize it. But I think we still have that a little bit of a story of our heads of someone's going to judge me for my body, or someone's going to think I'm looking for male attention if I show my
Mm,
body.
absolutely. Whew. And that's really when I went to New Zealand at 18. It was so huge. Same with Turkey. They're so comfortable. And especially the Europeans, they just are natural being naked. And I remember I felt so awkward at first. But yeah, I think what that really comes down to is that we've been taught that our breasts and that our yoni are sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one small component of our yoni and our breasts. So I feel like normalizing breastfeeding as well in public, normalizing, like you said, being naked together with your friends. Like my best friends and I, like I've seen their yonis just through our hanging out and having fun together. So it's not a sexual thing, just understanding that through seeing another person and another woman's body, it helps us to understand our own. I really feel like I actually had a soul retrieval happen the first time that I had another woman look at my yoni and I looked at her yoni. Like it was really profound. What came back to me, it was this part of feeling this shame, like I couldn't have that from a past life. And in that moment, it was healed. And from that moment forward, there's just been this full, comfortable feeling with nudity and with other women.
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate healing of the feminine. And so many of us are remembering our Magdalene lineage, Isis lineage, sex magic, all of these things. But, you can't jump into, I'm going to manifest with my orgasms if you can't even be at peace with your body on its own. So it's, building up those steps there. And the other thing I want to ask you on this topic of Amrita is, are cervical orgasms also, related to Amrita, or is it only G spot?
I have only had Amrita with G spot orgasms. I
Mhm.
love cervical orgasms. I've had them before. For me, cervical orgasms are really like when I've had them before, I get downloads, like these massive downloads that happen because it's literally the portal to your womb is opening and orgasming and spasming. With G spot to me and Amrita specifically, it feels like a baptism, like a relaxation. Like all of my cells are getting baptized. And it's not so much a clenching orgasm, like clitoral orgasms for me. It kind of feels like this electric, kind of like clenching. With the Amrita, it's this relaxing, this surrendering, this letting go sensation that I really, really enjoy the feeling and sensation of.
Yes, I feel the same way with the cervical. I definitely see visions and downloads
Yeah.
and it definitely feels like you really have to be so focused and present to let that part of you, because it is your womb, the corner of your womb, so it takes a
Yeah.
lot of opening and surrender to even get there. Someone shared that there are different archetypes. So the clitoral orgasm is like the maiden, and the G spot
Mm.
is like the wild woman, and the cervical is like the crone. And I was like, oh, that
Mm.
that definitely resonates. Yeah, the G
Beautiful.
spot Amrita, it's like the mermaid energy, the playful energy.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep. That wild surrender, just letting go.
Mm. And the last question I'd love to ask you is, what does connecting to the Lemurian frequency mean to you as someone who's living on Kauai right now?
Mm. Oh my gosh. Such a great question. So for me, Lemuria, there can be so much thought around what was Lemuria? Was it a physical place? Was it a higher dimensional realm? And the reality is, we don't know. There's so many different people that have different thoughts on what it actually was. But for me, the most important thing is just connecting to the energy, connecting to the essence, and bringing that into right now, this body, this moment, right now. And the first time that I came to Kauai, I started having such deep, mystical, otherworldly experiences. Like I had a vision of the flower of life blooming in front of my face and just a lot of really mystical things. And I started feeling connected to this higher dimensional realm, like you might want to call 5G or 6G or whatever you want to call the higher dimensions. And for me, Lemuria, that specific frequency is one of that the dolphins still carry so powerfully, that ecstatic bliss and that joy. It's a time before the fall, before humans, falling into these lower, these like different experiences. I won't call them lower. It's been such a beautiful learning lesson for all of us to be able to have the opportunity to experience greed or shame or hatred or pain or all these things. It's wow, what a great learning experience, right? But Lemuria was before those things. It was when we were living in a more refined vibration of light and experiencing more peace and love and prosperity and joy for all. And for me, connecting to the Lemurian frequency, what's been the most helpful? Of course, living on Kauai, because it's said that Kauai is actually a remnant of ancient Lemuria. And I can definitely attest to that just with my own personal experiences of being here. But what I found has been the most helpful in connecting to that frequency is, of course, calling in the dolphins. For me, the dolphins are my number one spirit guide. And whenever I do shamanic journeys, they're always right there. It's like dolphins and then the angelic realm. So dolphins to me are very connected to that energy. Of course, the water. So like I have shared in this podcast, doing your water prayers, making water offerings, and specifically working with crystals and making water offerings and gemstones. This is so powerful. I'll just share a brief story. When I first came here 5 years ago, I hiked up to this really mystical hidden waterfall. And when I was at the waterfall, I was told to offer this crystal that I had on me to the waters. And it was a rutilated quartz that I'd been singing into for 5 years. And it had all these lines, because you know how rutilated quartz, when you sing into them, it programs and it gets the beautiful lines. And so the water asked for it. And I thought, oh no, I can't let go of this crystal. I love crystal so much. And she was like, no, you need, I need this crystal. I said, okay. And so I offered it into her waters and I let it go. And in that moment, I felt the spirit of the waterfall come up through my body. And it was like my cells were blooming in flowers. I've never experienced that same sensation. It was like I was meeting the deva of that waterfall. It was so powerful. And so what's come to me since then, I do so many crystal water offerings, is that this is such a primary way that we can access those subtle dimensions. First off, we need to ask. And second off, we need to give a gift. So crystals are one of the best things that we can give. Water is really connected to Lemuria, right? And water is a portal, just like we came through the waters of our mother and father into the womb, right? The watery womb. Water is also an access point for spirits. That's why you get downloads in the shower, you get downloads in the bath. Literally, there's more of an opening available for that to happen when you're in the water. So I recommend going to the water and getting a crystal that you're going to offer, whether it's been one that you've been working with for years, or it's one that you feel like, oh, she needs Larimar. And going to the water, whether that's a waterfall, river, ocean, just let your intuition lead you. And pray into the crystal and pray to the water. Ask, I am here, to be of service to humanity. And I feel a deep desire to connect more with this Lemurian frequency of love, of joy, of heaven on earth, of peace for all. And I make this offering, this crystal offering, in gratitude for my life. And I ask for assistance in moving forward more connected to this energy and to this essence. And then offering the crystal into the water and wait and see what happens. Like I said, I've had magical experiences from this. And if nothing happens, just wait. Not everything happens instantly. We don't need instant gratification. You can have a realization come many months later that's linked to that. And keep doing it. Really get into this rhythm of making crystal offerings to water. She's calling for it. Really calling for it. That's been a message I've been receiving so clearly, so deeply.
What a beautiful story. I had full body chills hearing that. And that's definitely something I want to start doing more of blessing my crystals, singing to my crystals. What was the name of the crystal you said that has the lines when you sing to it?
Yeah, rutilated quartz.
Rutilated
So
quartz.
I bought it and literally I did this chakra singing practice and I'd sing into my crystal and it started getting golden, literally growing, sprouting these golden lines. It was so magical.
Wow.
And I realized wow, I'm actually just like a computer, it gets information stored on crystal. I am getting my information stored into the crystal. Oh, and this is the piece I wanted to say. So in connecting with, the unseen realms. And that's a long story. But anyway, when connecting to the unseen
Share it.
realms,
We're here for it.
okay, well, there's the little people, right? So this is another part of kind of mysticism, is there's the leprechauns of Ireland, right? There's the menahune or the manahune of Hawaii. There's the candomblé of Africa. And these little people, we can't see them because we barely see anything as humans. We see like less than 1% of the visible light spectrum. So we're walking around and there's all these other beings and frequencies that are actually there. And so a message that I received from the candomblé, the little people of Africa, is they said that the crystals are storing the Lemurian frequency, the rocks, the stone beings, and the crystals. They've been around since those times, especially here on Kauai. I'm this part of Kauai that's still out of the ocean. It was a temple of Lemuria, all of it. So the access point is still really open to those higher dimensional realms and mystical experiences. And it's not just here. This is all over the world. There's places like this all over the world. But the crystals are holding this frequency. The stones are holding this frequency. They're not just rocks. They're literally containing information, containing consciousness. And so as we're offering and we're intending, we're praying and asking for this Lemurian frequency to be awakened within us and to be awakened again on the planet, we're praying that to the crystal, we're offering it. We're asking the crystals and the stone beings to wake up. We're saying, we're ready. We're ready for you, right? It's time. This information was hidden. We've been going through the dark ages, but now it's the dawn of Aquarius, right? All the darkness is coming out to be seen, but I really do believe that we're entering a golden age and we're remembering these ancient teachings and that they are in nature. So getting out into nature, connecting with the water, connecting with the crystals and the stones and the trees, and remembering just birthrights of ours as humans to connect back with nature. And to ask, we always need to ask, right? So asking the crystals, asking the water, and starting to have a relationship. It's just like a person. You're not going to have a deep relationship with someone if you don't put in energy. You can't just expect like automatically you're going to have a good relationship. Like sometimes you groove with more people more than others, but it takes energy. Same with making a relationship with the water, making a relationship with the crystals. It takes our energy and our intention.
So beautifully stated. I think right now, so many people are obsessed with this buzzword of manifestation, but it's like, I want to take. Give me this boyfriend and this car and this much money. And you haven't built a relationship with the elements. You haven't given back to the earth. And I actually do remember my first time seeing the little people, the little beings in Bali on a mushroom medicine ceremony, and seeing them just in this perfect line. And they were in different lines in different places. And just like, they weren't human. Like they had like no personality to them. They were just like moving in these like very specific orders, and having that realization of like, they're always there and they're everywhere. And sometimes when like something might move in your house or appear, it's them. And I was like, I can't believe I haven't seen this before. But they are there. And that's why in every single culture around the world, we have some form of elves or gnomes, as well as mermaids, nymphs, sirens, all of these mystical beings. It's not dragons. It's not made up. Why would all of these completely disconnected cultures have these exact same images? It's because it's there. It's a multidimensional being that we are now being able to receive access to.
Absolutely, love. I just got chills, and they're ready. I feel like that's been part of my prayers actually every day, is like, okay, I'm ready. I feel like it's time that we see more of you. And when humans realize that it's not just a tree or it's not just a flower, it has a spirit, it has a deva. You have a different care for it than if you just think, oh, it's just a flower, or, oh, it's just a tree. It's like, no, that's a living being. And we have that connection. And I just want to reiterate what you said about the manifestation, because I feel like that's one of the biggest spiritual traps of our generation is consumerism, materialism. More, give me more, manifest more. And really, like, that's not what it's about. And it's not just using spiritual tools to get what you want. That's not the point.
This
No, the
modern
point is
manifestation movement is that it's consumerism wrapped
yeah,
in a
it's
little
with a
spiritual bow
pretty,
tie.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
completely wrong.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad, but hopefully enough people see through it and recognize that it's the alchemy of your soul. You don't take anything with you after you die, except the alchemy that you've done inside of yourself and the connection that you've made inside yourself to spirit, the good that you've done, what you've sown, the seeds you've planted. It's more about, I like to say, when we give something, we're receiving. If we're giving from purity, I know a lot of times as women, we can overgive and it's not coming from a pure place of overflowing chalice and there can be resentment. But if we can truly give from that place of authenticity and overflow, we automatically receive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm living my dream life. I live in heaven on earth. Literally everything in my life right now, it's like I feel like I'm literally in heaven. It's magic. But I never was like, oh, I'm just doing spiritual practices to try and get something, or no, it was about the alchemy and going on the journey and holding the vision, but letting go of how you're going to get there, right? Because there's a divine plan. I believe there's a divine plan for all of our lives. And it takes letting go of the conditioning, which most of us are getting a lesson in right now, because literally the whole entire matrix is falling apart before our eyes. So it can seem like, oh my gosh, the world's ending. Yes, that world is ending. Thank the goddess. But there is a whole other world that has always been here and will always be here. And when you tap into that frequency and tap into that, that's where it's not a piece of cake, like your whole everything's handed on a silver platter, but every step can become one of magic, right? Because we learn to not be afraid of the anger, the grief, or whatever it is. We're embracing life. We're truly living. And we're having that courage of our soul to follow our heart and to listen to the subtle realms and to be magical, not just to fit in a box.
Oh, yes to all of that. And this is an invitation for everyone listening to trust the codes that are coming through them. There's no right or wrong
Yes.
way to work with the water or to work with anything. Being a water priestess like you are, it's a remembrance, it's an inner calling, and just be with the waters and see what comes through. Do you want to sing to it? Do you want to move around in it? So many of us naturally, especially as kids, were like swimming like a mermaid in the water. I remember when I was like 11 years old doing this full with like my family, friends, and brother, making them follow me along in this full like water ceremony with like, I found these coconuts and I was like not knowing, but I was like baptizing them. We were praying and it was like I was being a kid, right? But I was remembering something that I used to do. So it's like letting that come through you and trusting, as wacky or weird as it might seem, this is actually something that you have probably been doing in a past life that you're finally giving yourself the permission to do in this one.
Oh, so beautifully said, love. I love that you were doing that. When you come to Hawaii, let's definitely do that. That sounds so fun. And yeah, what you said is such a key. Tapping into the childlike innocence and the childlike joy where you literally don't care what anyone else thinks. And you're in the water and you're just following what feels good and playing and doing silly things and just allowing yourself to be and not in those constructs or like, oh, a water priestess does this. And so I have to act like that or do this. And that's when rituals become stale, you know? And that's why I always say with any ritual that I share in teachings, it's like, make it your own. Use this as a guideline, but then do what inspires you in the moment. Because the most spiritual thing that we can do is get present, where we're not in the past, we're not in the future, we're so right now. And we're just in that current and that alignment with source. And that's where I've seen just otherworldly magic happen from. Not so much following a script or someone else's, religious or spiritual ideal. It's like, no, really, it lives in you. All the answers are in you. And listening to your deep, deep, deep wisdom and getting quiet enough to hear that voice. And I know that being in the water and working with the water has been the most instrumental thing for helping me to access that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And this is inspiring me to just drink a bunch of water right now and get into a bath and just like let myself be at one with the waters that I am. So where can listeners connect with you further, come on your next retreat and just learn from you?
Yeah, so everything can be found at dakotachanel.com. I have a 6-month Water Priestess Mystery School. I have an amrita orgasm course. And then I have some upcoming retreats that are getting moved to spring of next year. And then
Beautiful.
Instagram, of course, I am Dakota Chanel.
Perfect. And I will have that link in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing. This was so much fun. I'm like, let's talk about the mermaids now and not the dolphins so much.
Yay.
I am definitely on that water wavelength with you. So thank you so much for being a light, a wave, and sharing with all of us.
Thank you so much, Lemurian sister. I so deeply appreciate you. So good to be with you today.
How sacred and juicy and flowing was that episode. Woo! I loved it so much. It's definitely right after I did it, I did a water ritual. I had an empty coconut shell that I filled with water and offered it to my altar, and definitely want to be connecting even more and more with that frequency. I notice every time I go into a pool or a tub or something, it's so much of my stress just alleviates. And I think we constantly need that reminder in this very, very aggressive, very masculine shadow side of the masculine world today. So Dakota is kindly offering Highest Self podcast listeners a 10% off discount with code Sahara. You can find that link in the show notes if her Sacred Amrita course is calling your name, and dive more into that. If you loved this episode, I would love to send you a free gift, which is the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type. This is a different book than Eat Feel Fresh, my first book ever, which is not released anywhere, and I am gifting it exclusively to those who leave a review of my podcast in the iTunes store. So all you got to do is head over to iTunes where you may be listening to this podcast and leave a review. Take a screenshot that you've left it and email it over to me at Sahara@eatfeelfresh.com. Again, that's Sahara, Sahara, at eatfeelfresh.com. And I will send you back the first half of my unreleased book, Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type, which goes all into Ayurveda, doshas, plant-based nutrition, body types, all of the things in a really fun and engaging way. So this is my gift to you for free for supporting the podcast. Every single review I personally read. It really helps the podcast be listened to by more people so we can raise the vibration of the planet together. And I am so grateful to have you on this journey. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Namaste.